All right. Going live, everybody. Just a moment. Okay, we are live. Good evening, everyone. I'm Delegate Robin Lewis, and you have joined the Land Use and Ethics Subcommittee in the Maryland General Assembly for our March 25th, 2025 work session. Thanks, everyone, for being here. We have our agenda before us. We're going to start with House Bill 503, then we'll go to Senate Bill 150, and end with House Bill 1255. So, Ben, would you be so kind and walk us through the first bill on our agenda, House Bill 503? That's the Housing for Jobs Act.
Great. Thank you, Chair Lewis. I'm
Thank you.
sharing my screen. These are the kind of proposed amendments to the bill that were sent out with the agenda. These are an amended version of House Bill 503. These are should be looked at as the bill for House Bill 503. I'll be working and prioritizing amendments for these as soon as I can in a more formal draft form. But with that being said, I can just go through this updated version, if I may.
Yes, please.
Thank you. So section 1101, this is providing that the Secretary of the Department of Housing and Community Development set 10-year targets for state housing production. And then relatedly, there's also going to be targets for counties and municipalities, specifically those that are exercising land use authority. The Secretary is going to be setting these targets. And we'll be doing so in consultation with local governments and bi-county agencies. That's specified in subsection C there. The targets are going to be set using forecasts for employment, population growth, other economic and demographic factors, and then DHCD is going to be submitting a report on this every year and assess progress by the state and in local jurisdictions. That's also specified in subsection C there. Moving to section 1102. In subsection A, it's providing that a housing development application must be governed by the laws that are in effect at the time of complete application submission. And so that is that's a term, there, housing development project application. That's I believe, a term that is defined in the existing House bill that was introduced. So just one thing to keep in mind, but the reason for that is the issue becomes if the laws are constantly changing or the goalposts are moving, it can inhibit development and in construction. 1102C, this is providing that it still allows local governments to have health and safety codes necessary that they deem necessary. So that provision's there for that. Moving to section 1105, this is establishing a Maryland Housing Crisis Commission. What the purpose of this is to study and make recommendations to address the housing supply and affordability crisis in the state. And this is going to look at things like material costs, land use regulations, permitting processes, and affordable housing financing. Provision here in 1105C on the composition of the commission. It's got the Secretary of DHCD, Department of Planning, Environment, members from the House and Senate, local governments, individuals with a background in this area, residential building, permitting, historic preservation, and then either submitting a final report on or before July 1, 2026 on this work of the commission. So that is the updated version of the bill, Chair Lewis.
Great. Great. Okay, my mic is on. Good. Great. Thank you so much, Ben. Now I'll just we'll just talk these through. I know members will all have thoughts, but I'll just remind everyone that This bill, House Bill 503, was heard in Environment and Transportation on March 4th. So it's been a couple of weeks since we had the hearing. After that March 4th hearing, we walked through this bill in the Land Use Subcommittee on March 10th. So again, it's been a little while, and the bill that we heard and the bill that we reviewed in our first work session is very different. This draft amendment before you is now the bill. So I welcome questions and discussions because this is going to seem in some ways fairly fresh to your eyes. So are there any questions? We start with, just put your hand up. Okay, the first hand I see is Delegate Terrasa. Please go ahead.
Thank you, Madam Chair. And first, let me say, I think this is it is very different, but it, I think, is much improved. I'm pleased to see, and I'm just seeing it today, although I've certainly had discussions with folks, but it is much improved. I do have I don't have any concerns about 1101. I think that makes a lot of sense. But in 1102, I just was hoping we could talk about this sort of at the time of application, and how that would work. And whether that expires at any point, like, is that, forever? Like they can just keep the project going forever, or is there a time frame? And then I guess what I would say in conjunction with that is that if the application is, for example, for a zoning board case, like a zoning board case, like the zoning changes in a zoning board case, so that's the whole purpose of a zoning board case. Right, so does this apply to a zoning board case?
So thanks for your questions. I will ask for the best person to answer, and I'll just mention that we're joined by a number of guests on the Zoom this evening. And thank you for being here. Just a reminder on the norms, we keep our cameras off and our mics muted unless we're called on as guests. So everybody seems to know that. But with regard to Delegate Terrasa's question, I'm not sure who might be best to answer that. Perhaps Brad Fallon, would you like to take a stab at an answer?
Yeah, I'm happy to. And I'd like to actually, can I do a two-parter and call on Haley Lemieux? Would that be all right, Mr. Chair?
Of course, yeah, absolutely.
So on the first part, there is some definitions in the bill. I think, and actually I was just saying this to the two local government associations as well. The particulars of that language, Delegate, I think we're completely malleable on. The principle that we're advancing is just, if you have, say you've acquired a property, you're moving forward and you say, okay, it's been zoned this, it has a height limitation of this, it has a setback of this, so and so and so. When you walk in and you submit your application along those guidelines, they don't change from there. On the expiration piece, I can certainly answer that. I know there was some talk about a predetermined timeline or something. The way that this language came in certainly is intended, and I think does, set that to whatever the local sets their standards at. So some folks may have hey, there's been no activity on the site, we can revoke the approval here, or a permit in some cases. That's completely allowable here, and this is the intention. On the other hand, they might say, hey, you have approval for 3 years, right? And same deal here. It would apply there, and it's still sensitive to the underlying laws of the local jurisdiction. On the zoning request, Haley, I'm sorry to put you on the spot, but you may have a better sense of that than I do.
Go ahead, Haley.
Delegate Terrasa, our understanding from reviewing similar provisions in other states is that this would not include, for example, a zoning text amendment related to a project. However, that could always be clarified in the bill language further.
What about you said, say that again, which type of zoning?
So for example, if a project were applying for a zoning text amendment because
a text amendment, okay,
a higher density on a site than is currently allowed, then that application would be treated separately. As my colleague, Mr. Fallon mentioned, there's a definition in the bill that it's the first in a series of permits related to a specific site. So we'd be happy to clarify that interaction.
And then what about comprehensive rezoning?
So in this instance, a comprehensive rezoning would not be applied to a specific project if they had ongoing approvals. That's part of the intent of the bill. If a property has been zoned for a certain use for a long period of time and you submit an application, then that zoning can apply even if a comprehensive rezoning occurs throughout the entitlement process.
Okay, so let me just sort of on a practical level, because I understand the intent and I get it. But you could be going through like a 3-year comprehensive rezoning process. And could somebody sort of race you to the, like, let's say they don't like how the area is being rezoned. Couldn't they just race you to the finish line by just putting in an application and it being declared complete?
I'm happy to defer to my colleague if he wants to, if Brad wants to jump in. So in theory, there could be incentives where I know there's going to be a comprehensive rezoning, but in practice, comprehensive rezonings are very rare. They happen over long periods of time. So typically in that instance, a property would have been zoned for a certain use for multiple years, 5 to 10 years. Before that application was put in, before a longer process that would have been subject to public comment and everything that's involved in setting a zoning ordinance.
Maybe you could just help clarify, and then maybe we could call on, I think Mr. Sanderson is here from Mako, but help me understand what you mean by they're rare, they're periodic. Right, so they happen on a regular basis.
I apologize if I wasn't clear, Delegate. So exactly, they do happen on a periodic basis. My understanding is that in Maryland, they typically happen in 5, 10, 15-year increments. So I think the instance where an applicant would race to the finish line would be rare. I don't think that the instance where a comprehensive rezoning occurs would be rare.
Say that last little part that you said you don't think it would be. I missed. I didn't understand.
Sorry. So to your original question of an applicant racing before a comprehensive rezoning, they know a rezoning is going to happen. They want to submit an application before that does. In that instance, for that project, that parcel most likely would have been zoned for that use for a long period of time, multiple years. So the instance of them racing before a more systemic rezoning, I think, would be rare. That was the point I was trying to convey.
Well, if it's rare, then could we take that piece out? I mean, it seems to me that like a comprehensive rezoning process can be a several-year process. And if you don't apply for your project until that process, that 3-year process, for example, is almost done, it seems to me that you shouldn't have the old rezoning necessarily.
Who
So
can answer that question?
Could we possibly ask Mr. Sanderson, just because he works
Mr.
with county?
Sanderson, would you like to try to answer that question?
I'd be happy to, Madam Chair, do my best. I'm Michael Sanderson with the Maryland Association of Counties. Sorry, you got the B team today. We've been scattered around today. That's how it goes. I think our concern with this middle part of the bill, the 102 section of the bill, is exactly the potential for some perverse incentives. Local jurisdictions have to go through comprehensive rezoning and a new comp plan on a regular cycle. 10 years or less is the standard across the state. And generally speaking, all the stakeholders know that that date is coming, that they know here we are in Anne Arundel County, we're 2 years away, the process starts, we're 1 year away, we're getting our sleeves rolled up, and then 1 year later it's going to be before the council for final votes and so forth. So there really would be a window to jump the gun and say, I kind of like the zoning I have today, and even if my project's not ready, I want to play by today's rules rather than tomorrow's rules. And we're a little concerned that the middle part of the bill might leave effectively early vesting in perpetuity that could last an awfully long time. And like we get, I think the spirit of the bill is to not enable sort of targeted change in, you know, the change the move the goalposts, right? That sort of phrase, the side of sort of let's go in and stop this development by making a tricky change. We're not trying to alter this part of the bill to enable that, but we are concerned that the routine comprehensive zoning, where we say this area of the county, we got our school expansion, we've got our new water line coming, that's the best place to grow, not this other area. To say, well, you have to keep growing in the other area because everybody got their permits filed on time, and now they get to keep that for, at least as we read this part of the bill, forever. We think that's a perverse incentive. I think you could keep the spirit of this part of the bill without necessarily keeping both of those doors wide open.
Thank you. Any comment on that?
From me or somebody else?
Anyone?
Yeah, I mean, I think that might need some clarification in the bill, if that's what, because I do get the whole idea that like people have started a project, counted on that project, and then the rules change out from under them. I get that. We don't want to do that. But like Michael Sanderson was saying, these could be going on, like they could be well aware of this comprehensive zoning. Also, the comprehensive rezoning happens after the general plan gets changed. So the general plan could be calling for different areas where there are, you know, higher density or lower density or what have you. So that's my comment on that. And then the other piece on B that I was a little concerned about is that, and I think this all could just be, is just tweaking, I hopefully, but it says when you first apply on a multiple stage project, but a multiple stage project could be a 30-year project. And so would that mean that the zoning is like completely frozen? And so for example, in a phased project, there might be future approvals that are supposed to happen. It seems to me that the county should still have the ability to do that. Otherwise, you're sort of canceling their law on that.
So I'm curious about this. Zoning can change now. Comprehensive plans are done on a periodic basis. A project could be underway now. Comprehensive zoning is happening concurrently and it finishes and it's new, it's different. How do localities deal with that now? How would it be any different under this bill? Who can answer my question?
Oh, I mean, the way I see it as different is that this is changing when the project is vested in relation to that. So this says as soon as the initial application is complete. And so that, I don't think we need super late vesting, but that does sort of seem to override whatever the locals have to say about that. But if I'm wrong.
So I'd love to have one of our guests with expertise answer my question. Who would be the best person? And if you would, raise your hand. Haley, would you like to try to answer my question, please?
Yeah, Madam Chair, I would be happy to. So under the status quo in Maryland, a developer can have an approved building permit and have already started work so long as that work isn't substantial. And they could still have development standards change. That's existing case law in Maryland, set from a project in Prince George's County that had actually poured a foundation and had to stop work on the project when the zoning standards change. So under the status quo in Maryland, development rights agreements are allowed and are something that counties have the authority to issue. They're discretionary. My understanding is that those are common for projects that are underway in the instance that there's a broader comprehensive rezoning happening.
Okay, that's helpful. Thank you. Delegate Taras, I'm going to move to Delegate Naraki, who's been waiting patiently with his hand raised. Delegate, would you like to go ahead?
Thank you, Madam Chair. Yes, I would like to talk about those time periods for a second. To Delegate Terraz's point, in Baltimore County, the third largest jurisdiction in Maryland, we do comprehensive rezoning every 4 years. And that process really kind of is almost on like a continuous, almost 2-year cycle. You get it started kind of a year out from when you're doing it. I think that we could have some really perverse incentives in Baltimore County, at least, to try to vest projects that really probably don't conform with what the county is looking for in those kinds of time periods. I represent one of the growth areas in the county. There have been some projects that, frankly, there's a new council member in this area, and he's kind of turned down some of the zoning here because we've had just a tremendous amount of growth to try to allow infrastructure to catch up. And I'm just very concerned that if we're just going to vest projects at any stage of the game, we could have some really, really unfortunate outcomes in my part of the county, at least, because we just do it on a much more frequent basis in Baltimore County than maybe some other jurisdictions do.
Okay, that's helpful. Thank you. I'd like to, in the interest of time, because we're combing through, we're deliberating, we're thinking through this new version of the bill. Let's keep going so that we can cover this bill and then move on to the others. Are there, so your observations and questions are noted. Okay, Delegate Taras, I see your hand.
Thank you, Madam Chair. And moving on to a different section. So 1102C, I think that could be a little broader. So so I would love to see it say, so it says nothing in this section shall be construed to limit the ability of local government to apply health safety codes. It should also say, I think it should also say environment. And frankly, this is a very narrow look at health and safety with the second piece of that. So it says apply health and safety codes that are necessary to address immediate threats to public safety. But it could be I'm not sure what would be an immediate threat to public safety in zoning. It would probably be sort of an intermediate time frame, right? It would be, you build this and it's going to create a dangerous situation, or you're building it next to a nuclear zone, or so I just think that needs a little broadening in terms of what it's protecting. That's my comment on that.
Okay, noted. So I'm curious if there may be examples of the sort of broader language. Ben, maybe be able to help us with this. Broader language as the delegates describing that encompassed environment, maybe somewhere else in statute, or if anyone, some of our visiting experts might comment on that question, or hold it to our next conversation.
I think, yeah, Lewis, if you want to, I think that'd be pretty easy to do if you're looking for an amendment to just make it more like form language and maybe remove the immediate part. But
Okay, so let's hold that thought. Let's think about that. Thank you, Ben. All right, great. Thank you, delegates, for your questions and insights, and also to our guests. I've heard a couple of times the reference to the risk of perverse incentives. And so I would flag that, since it's a theme we are hearing, and I'd ask, I think perhaps Brad Fallon or Haley could help us think through, first of all, is that a feature that you'd considered, and how you would answer that?
Yeah, thank you, Madam Chair. And I'm either to Haley to round it out at the end, if that's okay. But
Absolutely.
I think Delegate Naraki, I understand your point, and when you brought up the perverse incentive, I'd suppose if we're starting every 2 years on a plan to rezone the entire county, and it would be inappropriate at any time to expect that you can use the zoning or any of the land use standards on site. I don't know what that does long term. If you can't ever be in a position where you say, hey, if I'm a business owner, I follow the laws exactly as you said them, but even then it can change. that may be a philosophical disagreement, which I completely understand. But I do think it is, I don't know if we see it as a perverse incentive, certainly, in that way. I think the way that we see it and the way that we're trying to build it in after the committee provided these amendments and we did a little bit of tweaking is to build into the processes that the county set. So if the counties, for instance, have a law on their books that says you can't just get a permit and leave it here for indefinitely, right? Get 30 permits and see if any of them pan out, right? If they have something there that says if there's no activity on the site, we can take it. Or if there is a time limitation. The intention there was to make that sensitive to the underlying laws there to make it applicable. But I just noticed your hand went up.
Yeah, Delegate Naraki, did you want to say
I was
something?
going to let Mr. Fallon finish and this want to respond, but I wasn't meaning to cut you off, Brad. So
Okay, go ahead and finish, Brad, and then Delegate Naraki.
Yeah, and I think that's the fundamental case for us. You know, philosophically, in our view, once we set regulatory climate, which is, you know, the prerogative of local jurisdictions to determine their land use, that we do need to build and that we do not want to push away that type of investment because we know that we have a housing crisis. And that once they set these standards, whatever they are, that somebody can walk onto the site after they purchased it and look to move ahead. I think that's kind of the philosophical point. If there are kind of fine tuning on the language, we're totally here.
Thank you, Brad. Delegate Naraki?
thank you, Madam Chair. And Mr. Fallon, totally. I think we actually agree on that. I just think that there's maybe some guardrails there. I think it just depends on where at in the process you're talking about vesting. Like, is it literally I've just turned in one piece of paper? Or like, you know, we've had some sort of significant steps to moving forward to development. I think that that's where the key is there. It's not sort of just at any stage of the process, but that there maybe needs to be some tightening that up with some guardrails in that process there, just which I think is reasonable. And I think even most property owners and communities would agree that if you put a significant amount of time into a project, absolutely, we don't want to change the rules of the game midstream on you. But if you've literally done, you know, the absolute bare minimum and we're going to vest at that point no matter what, I think that there might be some room for discussion there at that point.
So it sounds like, from my perspective, we're honing in on an area for improvement, and that is more clearly defining when in the process a project is vested. So I would say we don't necessarily have to decide that now, but if I put a pin in that as something we definitely want to address through, you know, more refined language through an amendment, I promise that we'll come back to it. Does it sound about right? Delegate Naraki, Delegate Terrasa? Okay, great. So Ben would put a pin in that, we'll work on that, clarifying. And we'll do some of this offline. We can talk offline. Okay, great. Delegate Terrasa.
Thank you. I think that's great. I mean, like I said, I'm really pleased by the changes in this bill, and I think we're close, even if I don't completely agree philosophically. I think it makes a lot more sense now, and I think it works a lot better. So I just like to, I think you've pinpointed the concerns well. The only thing I just wanted to mention is that on 105, I would just like to see, certainly in terms of the 6 individuals, this is in C, the 6 individuals who will be appointed having knowledge of at least one of the following. I'd like to see there also be one that says the needs of I'm not exactly phrasing it how it would work, but the needs of low income residents, or the needs of the housing needs of low income residents. If the point here is really to look at the affordable housing, I'd like to make sure that we're including people who are familiar with that piece.
Okay, thank you.
And then on the first one, on the first one, which is B, again, it's not just affordable housing financing, but somebody who's familiar with the requirements of building affordable housing might make sense there as well. But that's it for my comments.
Okay, great. Very concrete and helpful. Thank you. Delegate Davis.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I think it's a great bill. I believe that at the pace we're going to kill it. And if there is and if there is agreement among some of our members to move it with the idea that we're going to tweak it later, we've got to do something unless the intention is to kill the bill. I'd like to hear from other people that haven't spoken. I mean, if you want me to move it, I'll move it. But I really think we need to hear from other people. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, Delegate Davis. And I really appreciate that. And you're absolutely right. So I see Delegate Lehman's hand up, and then I'm going to ask the other members to comment as well. We spent about 15 minutes on this bill, so let's try to wind it up in the next couple minutes so we can move on to the others. We will come back to this. Thank you. Thank you, Delegate Davis. Delegate Lehman?
Thank you, Madam Chair. And I am pleased to see the changes here too. I agree with Delegate Terraza about having a better representation. If we're serious about looking at affordable housing, that we should have representation that includes some low-income residents. And also, I wanted a clarification on the membership where it talks about two folks from counties, one urban and one rural. Is that two people from every single county, or a total of two people in the entire state, one representing an urban part of whichever county and one representing a rural part?
I think, okay, so thank you. So there were two questions there. First, you want, you also would like to
Added
see
membership of somebody
someone
that's,
for
that
who knows
not
about-
just is low income himself or herself, and not just one person. I think it would have to be a minimum of two in case one person's not available, and that's not that much representation anyway. But also to have that different perspective, but somebody that's actually lived in affordable housing or subsidized housing, or, maybe someone that has been on a waiting list for a long time and has been unable to get into affordable housing because there's, too much demand and too little supply, something like that. But
Okay, I think we can work on that. I'll just make note that by my count, there are 17 proposed members of this commission. And I think including the chair, I think that's 17, or maybe if you add the chair, that's 18. And my question would be, what is a typical commission size? My understanding and my experience is that commissions and boards that are too large or unwieldy are ineffective, but ones that are too small, also ineffective. So I would ask Ben, I think it's worth looking at the commission size. I think it's worth looking at the membership, commission membership characteristics, and we can do that. But I would ask, if there's a sweet spot for the commission size, that would help guide us. With regard to whether there's one urban and one rural county representative total, I think I would ask Ben to help us look to other commissions to see how that representation is typically arranged, and we'll use that as our model. Okay, thanks for that. I want to go to Delegate Baylor and then Delegate Holmes in the last couple minutes on this bill. So take it away, Delegate Baylor.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I would just say I am in the same posture as Delegate Davis. I think if we keep delaying it, we risk it not passing. And I think we need to do something comprehensive on housing. And I think this is the best shot that we have to do that this session.
Thank you.
So for what it's worth, I would second, if there is a motion, whatever Delegate Davis was saying earlier.
I did not hear a motion, but I heard a willingness.
Madam
think-
Chair.
Yes, Delegate Holmes, go ahead.
Madam Chair, I make a motion that we move favorable on the amendments of this bill for discussion purposes. At least we get something moving. I move favorable on these amendments, Madam Chair, please.
Thank you,
second
Delegate.
that.
Okay, a motion to adopt the amendments on House Bill 503 have been properly moved and seconded. All those in favor say aye.
Madam Chair, I just want to clarify.
All those in favor say aye.
I was just
Aye.
Any
clarifying that
opposed?
motion.
Any opposed? Is there
Madam
any
Chair, I'm
discussion?
happy to vote for-
Okay, here's how we do this. A motion was moved and seconded. We have a voice vote. We ask if there's pros, if there are opponents, and then we have discussion. And having done that, now we can have discussion. So Delegate Terrassa.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I was just trying to clarify what we were voting on because I'd like to vote for this bill.
I'd be happy to clarify, and Delegate Holmes, if you would correct me if I misrepresent your motion, but the motion was to adopt the amendments to House Bill 503 for the purpose of,
That is
and go
exactly
ahead.
correct, Madam Chair.
Okay, so that's it. So the amendments are before us, and to continue working, because there were questions, there are refinements, and there is a willingness, I'm hearing from the subcommittee, to do something meaningful on housing production, which makes excellent sense. And so by adopting these amendments, that gives us the opportunity to keep working on this bill and keep moving forward in the 11 or 12 days that we have left. All right? Okay. Actually, that was pretty efficient. So 22 minutes. Jared, I think, I forgot to tell you to time me. But everyone's had a chance to speak, and we've adopted the amendments. Thank you. So Ben, we'll follow up and we'll keep working. Thank you to our guests who gave us insights. We will now move to Senate Bill 150, Real Property Recordation Land Records Requirements. Ben, would you go ahead and walk us through?
Okay, thank you, Chair Lewis. Yep, this is I'll pull the bill up. There's a very small technical difference, but it's a technical bill. So I guess wouldn't hurt to just take a brief look at the one small difference that is going. We've been speaking with the Senate sponsor, the House sponsor, the advocates who have been working on this technical bill as well to try to get a consensus uniform bill for both chambers. That's my understanding of what's been read. With that in mind, all of the amendments that the House and the subcommittee voted out are in the bill. There's one additional difference though, and I'm just going to show the members that just so you can see the difference. And that's just based on the time and place of the Senate looking at the bill, the House looking at the bill, but the difference is in line 12 here. It's striking the brackets there. The House version did not strike those brackets, so it's going to be reading as the clerk shall include in the index for each property identifier provided on an intake sheet, giving priority to identifiers in the order in which they're listed. That was language that is generally and essentially conveyed through the House version, but that is an amendment distinction that the subcommittee has not seen. And even though it's technical, again, the entire bill is technical, so I thought it wouldn't hurt to just take a brief look at that. But otherwise, they conform to what the subcommittee has seen before.
Okay. Very helpful.
Chair.
Thank you. Any questions? Sorry. Delegate Holmes.
Yes, Madam Chair, I move favorable on the amendment as the sponsor of the House bill. I move favorable on that amendment that Ben has just mentioned. And ladies and gentlemen, this is a bill, it's just technical amendments throughout as presented to us by the clerk of the court. I move favorable on the amendment.
Second.
Thank you. Thank you. The amendments to Senate Bill 150 have been properly moved and seconded. All in favor, say aye.
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 All right.
Move the bill as amended, Madam Chair.
Second.
Thank you. The bill's amended has been properly moved and seconded. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Any
Aye.
opposed? Any discussion? All right. The amendments have been adopted. Senate Bill 150 as amended has passed. Thanks, guys. All right. Ben, you got that? Okay. Now we will move to the last bill on our agenda, which is House Bill 1255, Land Use Historic Preservation Commission Right of Appeal. Ben, can you hold our hands and walk us through?
Yes. Okay, I'm going to pull my screen up with the amended version. One second. And okay, so this is a bill that let's see here. The title of the bill is Land Use Historic Preservation Commission Right of Appeal. There's no state or local fiscal impact. What this bill does, so it's in the land use article. You have in the land use article, there's your zoning provisions, you have your local provisions for land use, you have the by county agencies. This concerns specifically, though, your historic preservation commissions. And so that's going to be just how you want to maybe like understand the universe for the bill and what's going on here. The basis for the bill, this is explained in the fiscal note as well. Right now, with historic preservation commissions, the existing provision is in subsection, well, it's in lines 16 through 18, where it's saying that a person who is aggrieved by a decision of a historical preservation commission can appeal that decision in the manner that in the same manner that's provided for an appeal, typically from the planning commission of the local jurisdiction. There's been some confusion in the past about exactly what type of appeal is going to be constituted from that existing language in the bill. So my understanding of the sponsor's intent and the goal of this bill and the goal of the bill as amended is to make sure that that's further clarified. I'm going to pull up the statute provision because that's kind of the next part of this. This is again the same provision. This is the existing law. We were just looking at this with the bill. This is section 8308. This is also noted, I think, by the bill sponsor and in the fiscal note. There is let's see here. Yes, there's this provision here. It says the Land Use Article Review Committee. This is like a committee that reviews the code provisions, is noting through the publisher about how it's unclear whether there's an appeal always available through the local board of appeals. And then also into there, whether a local jurisdiction may divest an applicant of the opportunity to appeal to the local board of appeals rather than seeking judicial review. And so real quick, that's kind of like sort of more background on the issue. The last part of this is there was this AG opinion from 1982 that kind of, again, wrestled with this issue about the type of specific appeal that's available under the current law. Again, that's what this bill is trying to do. And what the bill is doing now, as you can see in subsection B, is providing that in addition, it's clarifying one, that there's a right to appeal under subsection A now of the bill. That was part of that land use article review committee note, but it's also going on to say that the local jurisdiction may authorize, so it is just enabling any person aggrieved by a decision of a commission to appeal the decision to the Board of Appeals, the zoning board for that jurisdiction, and then also the appropriate circuit court or both. And again, that's subject to the local jurisdiction's authorization. This AG opinion from 1982, it was just stating that in essence, it was what is the right of appeal for an aggrieved person. That was what that AG opinion that's noted in the fiscal notes looking at. In essence, they were saying that it gives the local, you can have the appeal through the local board, but there's also, again, a right to appeal directly to the circuit court. And that is the basis for the bill. And then the amendment was also based on that second part of what the Attorney General's sort of opinion was stating about what should be available or based on the local laws that exist. And then the very last thing is that there was testimony from Baltimore City about how it should be enabling legislation or how the Baltimore City's current local laws direct appeal straight to the circuit court for Baltimore City. I was looking into this too briefly. I just wanted to say, I'm pretty sure that this bill does not apply to, is not going to apply to Baltimore City, because, and I'm going to pull it up here, one moment. Here is the provision where this is what, this is in the land use article. It's specifying the following provisions of this division apply to Baltimore City. And then the historic preservation section that we've been looking at, 308, is actually not listed. So their concern should be addressed by the fact that the bill is not going to apply to them. They have their existing procedures in place. So that is a summary of the bill, Chair Lewis.
Thank you. All right. Are there any questions? Any discussion? I see Delegate Baylor's hand up. Go ahead, Delegate.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I briefly spoke to, I tried to speak to our Historic Preservation Commission in Annapolis tonight. But this would this require the City Council to adopt? I think right now the process is it's just judicial. This is just authorizing legislation, so the City Council would have to enact another ordinance or law to require it to go to this new Board of Appeals route.
So I think this is part of the confusion, or maybe perhaps part of the problem, or part of the basis for the bill. I think right now it depends on the type of county that you are, whether you're a charter, a commission, or a code county, those types of considerations. But let's see. So yeah, I think that's probably going to be the main determining factor, Delegate Baylor, about whether that's going to apply. But if it should be, with the bill as drafted and as presented, it's going to allow the local jurisdiction, which would be the governing body, whether it's a municipality or a county, to have an appeal through the Board of Appeals to authorize that, or the appropriate circuit court, which would be the local circuit court for that county, or both.
Got it. Thank you.
Does that answer your question, Delegate?
Yes.
Okay, great. Any other discussion or questions? Delegate Davis,
Madam Chair, move favorable.
move the amendments. Okay, thank you, Delegate. And do I hear a second? Great, the amendments have been properly moved and seconded. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposition? Any discussion? All right, great. So House Bill 1255 has been amended. Do I hear a motion to move the bill as amended?
Second.
Great. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposition? Any discussion? Okay. House Bill 1255 has been moved as amended. So the bills are moved as amended. Thank you, everyone. Now, yes. Yes.
I was a little confused on where we left the Housing for Jobs Act earlier.
Yeah, okay. We can quickly, because it's 8:30 and I don't want to keep everyone unreasonably long.
Yeah, so I think my understanding
ahead.
is we adopted the amendments. I mean, I would be willing to make a motion to move the bill with those amendments. I would go ahead and make that motion to move the bill with those amendments.
Okay. Thank you, Delegate.
Second.
Is there a second? Okay, the amendments that we reviewed today been properly moved and seconded. All those in favor say aye.
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 Any opposed?
I'm opposed.
Delegate Lehman?
I'm opposed.
Yeah, Madam Chair,
Delegate Iraqi? Okay, thank you. So the amendments have been adopted without, not unanimous. Thank you. So in terms of where I see the bill right now, the amendments before us that we reviewed with Ben
Madam Chair?
have been, yes.
If I can interrupt, I'm sorry.
Sorry, go ahead.
Dylan's motion was to move the bill as amended.
Thank you, Delegate Davis. I think we did that. Did I not say that? we took a vote, we took a voice vote to move the bill as amended, and that was not unanimous, but it passed.
And
Okay,
could I ask a question, please?
yes, questions?
Okay, so what about the suggestion that like we amend the makeup of the committee to include some low-income folks? Like, where does that
We
fit in?
still have the power to do that. Those are
When-
questions that were
when in the
raised.
full committee? When are we going to do that?
We're going to do that quickly as we can, working with Ben, who is here with us in the room, listening, taking notes, analyzing, and continuing to work on the amendments. I think we said it's certainly clear to me, and I hope clear to everyone, that the suggestions and questions that came up in today's discussion will be responded to. There was a question, I think, it crystallized as a concern about perverse incentives and clarifying project vesting. We'll do that. We'll work on that. This bill will come back. So we'll continue working on it. As to whether that will be in subcommittee or in full committee, that is something that we'll come back to you with. But we've got to move. We want to increase housing production. That's a commitment that we've made, and we can do that by refining this bill. There was another, oh, sorry, go ahead.
I was just going to say, so my motion was to move the bill as amended, and that motion passed with Delegates Lehman and Delegate Naraki, and I did not see Delegate Terrasa's hand, but with those folks against it. So the bill got out. My recommendation would be if there's further amendments, if we could potentially do that in full committee, I think that would be because I think the bill is out of subcommittee now.
Thank you, Delegate. Appreciate that. So we'll continue to stay in conversation with you as to the next steps. And that's something that will be decided and you'll be informed about. But the bill has been moved out of the subcommittee as amended. There are other questions that came up. We'll continue to work on those, okay? And you'll continue to hear about them. I even had an amendment I'd like to add about making sure that the Maryland Department of Health is included, but we'll keep working on that and we'll all see that. Okay? Great. All right, people. It's 8:30. Thank you for your hard work and your commitment. We've got lots more work ahead of us, but